Good evening, YouTube readers. This is Jessie again, and I am here bringing to you the second episode of Novel Ideas with Jessie. I know it's been a while since I've done my last episode, but this episode is going to be Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. And I chose this book because the way I came across Flowers in the Attic is because one of my most recent memories as a kid was my grandmother had a brown bookshelf kind of china cabinet in her living room, and on one of the shelves had a row of books, and one end was hardback black books, and sometimes she would let me pull them off and look at them, and they would have these strange covers where it's like a flower and there's a little cutout image and you could see a girl, but when you open it you could see the whole family and you could just feel the tension in the picture. So I always remembered that my grandmother read the Flower in the Attic series. So that's what led me to read it, and I've read the book a total of about 3 or 4 times. The first time was a few years ago, and I honestly did not have rave reviews for it then, and it wasn't from a lack of writing capability or imagination on V.C. Andrews' part. It's simply that the content was so dark and depressing and foreboding that it brought down my entire mood. I think I had to spend the next day or two just doing things that would make me happy so I could just wash that stain off of my soul from reading that book, is how heavily it impacted me. And the content of it was, I don't want to use the word taboo, but the content was so shocking at the time that you made you want to put the book down, but a morbid curiosity would keep you reading. For those who aren't acquainted with V.C. Andrews' first book, which is called Flowers in the Attic, the story was printed, I believe, in 1979, and it was it's what's considered a gothic novel. I guess you could say it's probably right on track there with what Miss Radcliffe used to write back 200 years ago. But though the book was written in 1979, it was set in the 1950s, or the later 1950s, and the average book was around 400 pages. So, I mean, an avid reader who has time on their hands, you could honestly knock it out in a weekend or one evening, all things depending. But back to what I was originally saying about how I came across this book, and the actual story behind it, the synopsis of it, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked here, is that the whole book is first person point of view, and it's being told by Kathy, who is the second oldest child in a family of 4 kids and 2 parents. But the story starts from her point of view as a little girl and works its way up through the series, and it's based on there was a father and a mother, and she had an older brother, Chris, and 2 younger siblings, Corey and Carrie, who were twins. And one day their father, who had been supporting the whole family by himself, got in a car accident and passed away. So the whole story is based around the fact that their mother was useless. She had no work ethic or capability, so they had to return everything they owned back to the collection agencies, and the only thing she could do was to pack her children up and to move them back into her parents' mansions. And see, the whole problem with that is that, well, one, her parents are like overzealous religious nuts, very much spoil the child and spare the rod type of mentality in child rearing. But on top of that, I mean, in all fairness, Kathy's mother and father did, participate in a very wrong sin, not wrong, but very taboo thing, very unwholesome thing, but without giving away the entire story here, the rest of the series covers the next, I believe, 3 or 4 years of the children dealing with that sort of atmosphere and environment that they're growing up in, and you get to see how the turning of their minds begins. I don't know if I would call it character growth. I mean, to some extent, yes, you would call it character growth, because even in the most troubling times and the most traumatic events, strengths are being built to become a better person. But while you want to believe that these kids are learning to be better people someday, at the same time, it's pretty much, like the euphemism of flowers in the attic. It's like pulling petals off of a daisy. I mean, you're really much watching these kids get torn down on slowly, day by day, month by month, and even year by year. And but this book had a very strong impact on me. So around, I think it was about the second time I had read it, and this is around the time that Game of Thrones had came out. So the subject matter, which had really became shocking the first time around, I guess it had kind of lost some of its effect, because you're really seeing it in the pop culture media everywhere. And so after that, it didn't have that much of a holding effect on me. It didn't take days to recuperate over it. But most recently, I bought it on my Kindle Unlimited app on my phone so I could read it again, because I had gotten in a conversation with someone about it, about what book did I find so shocking, and it came up, so I wanted to read it again. And it's weird, because it's been about 4 years since I've read it. So having matured and gone through things in my life that I have, it had a completely different effect on me that it had previously. That I can't say it, because like one particular part that really impacted me. I mean, to the point of moving emotions, but I can't say it without giving away spoilers here. But there's a particular part that involves Kathy, and it involves her father, and it involves her little brother Corey, and it's towards the end of the book, the last few chapters, and I can honestly say it moved me to the point of tears. There's other parts in the book that I've heard people talk about how they found it very emotional, and I don't even believe this part bothered me in the last 2 previous rereads, but this time and the funny part is, it's not even a traumatic scene. It's not like a angry or aggressive scene. It's such a sweet, calm moment in a time that when these children have done nothing but dealt with horror and trauma and everything else. There was just this lovely little moment, but at the same time, it's so heart-wrenchingly sad to me. I actually had to put the book down, and I cried for a moment, because that's just how touching, it really got me in the heart there. But I believe I had read somewhere that this book had been pulled from, like local libraries, because the content of it was considered so risque at the time that parents didn't want their children reading it. And I actually, my grandmother, the one who, inspired me to read it, actually told me, previously a few years back, after I told her I read the first book, that it was the only series she's ever encountered that she wished she had never read. So the Flowers in the Attic series had given her regrets, which really makes you wonder, like, okay, you read the first book and you regretted that, then why go on and read the rest of the series? I would recommend this book. I give it about 4 out of 5 stars. That's my rating. I give like a little post note on the bottom and an advisory here. If you're a person who is squeamish, if you have past trauma issues, you don't handle violence very well, sexual content, some sexual violence, I would highly avoiding this book. If you don't deal with taboo subjects like I guess minor sexuality, or incest, I would avoid this book as well. But yeah, I give it a solid 4 out of 5 stars because I do believe it is very well written. I believe V.C. Andrews really developed her characters very well. They stood out. You had your characters you liked, you had your characters you hated, and it was a very well developed novel. I believe she wrote it very well, even though sometimes the subject matter can be sort of appalling, but at least her skills carried you through the book. So I appreciate that. You don't get a lot of books. Sometimes I can find a book that, the subject matter is gripping and it looks interesting, but the author just lacks the skill set that I appreciate in a good novel to carry it through, and that's kind of disappointing, but V.C. Andrews did a good job. And on that note, out of all the characters in this book, if I had to pick a favorite, I guess I would pick Kathy, because I can understand her deep-seated resentment of her mother in the end. I can understand it. I connect with that on a personal level. So Kathy was my favorite because, she was strong and she fought. But if I had to pick a character I disliked, it would probably be a tie. I don't like the grandmother. She was mean in a way, I don't know, maybe it was from upbringing or just from lack of taking responsibility for what she did. I don't like the brother because of his lack of taking a stand, backing up his sister, believing in their mother entirely much longer than what they should have, and I don't really appreciate him for the way he treated Kathy, especially towards the end of the book. But above all, my most hated character in V.C. Andrews' Flowers in the Attic is the mother. What she did to her kids, the way she did it, the fact that she had no backbone or spine, and she was just some pampered little princess that always got what she'd wanted in life and was willing to throw anybody under the bus to get it. I hate that. V.C. Andrews did a great job writing her. I believe her name was Corin. She did a wonderful job writing Corin because you really hate that woman by the end of the book. So, good job, Miss Andrews. You did a wonderful job. But, yeah. So, that is my opinion. Corin is my most hated character. But, for anybody watching, YouTube readers, if you have read this book, comment below and tell me who is your most hated character in Flowers in the Attic, or if you don't have one, who's your favorite character in Flowers in the Attic. And I will see you next week with a brand new episode. We will be tackling classics, and I will also hopefully next week be starting on Mondays and bringing you guys manga classic reviews, and we'll see if we could double up that week, manga classic and then the novel version the Friday after. But I'll see you guys then, and while I'm gone, don't forget to read and visit your local libraries. They got everything you need, and all you need's a card. See you later.